All right, hello there. We're on to chapter 12 now, and chapter 12 is entitled Imperfect Competition. Got a little bit of a beach theme on this video because by the time most of you watch this, I am at the beach in North Carolina. We do a kind of an annual trip down there about this time of the year. Sorry to rub that in, but anyway, it's really hot though. So if you remember, in chapter 10, we studied this market structure called perfect competition. And in chapter 11, we studied monopoly. So we've done perfect competition over on the left. We've done monopoly over here on the right. Really, what imperfect competition refers to are these two terms in the middle, the two things called monopolistic competition and oligopoly. So if you remember this kind of this spectrum, we talked about market power or monopoly power. And we said really monopoly power is the ability to set prices as a business. And as you move from left to right on this graph, businesses have more and more ability to set prices. As you move from right to left, markets are more and more competitive. So we're really studying these four market structures over these three chapters. But this graph, I think, kind of helps you keep the big picture in mind. So this is kind of big and complicated, and I'm probably going to spend about the rest of this video just on this slide. I've posted the same thing, just a image of this slide on my MCC under week 5 and called it Market Structures Compared. I think this is the single best way to really understand those four market structures. So if this is too long and boring, you can just take a look at that, but I'm gonna kind of go through and talk about each row of this. So we have the four market structures across the top, certain characteristics of markets down on the left-hand column. So number of sellers is one way to start to narrow down a market structure. I'm going to ask you on the last test, I'm going to give you examples of some real-world markets and say, what is this? Is this perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, pure monopoly? So this slide kind of is intended to help you figure out what market structure really exists in a certain market. So you can start by looking at the number of sellers. If we're in perfect competition, remember the definition of that was, or part of the definition was many buyers, many sellers. So that's one indicator. Monopolistic competition, though, also is going to have many sellers. So if you've got a market with a lot of sellers, you can automatically narrow it down to those two. Oligopoly, the term oli, the prefix oli literally is a Greek term meaning few. So that word literally means few sellers. So any market where you have a very small handful, just a few sellers, is oligopoly. And if there's only one seller, it's pure monopoly. Now, people often ask me, well, what do you define as a few? I don't really know. It's at least two, somewhere around the 6, 8, 10, 16. I don't really know, but I think the real question, the real fear with oligopoly is that the sellers will get together and form a cartel. If they can start to work together and control prices as a group, that's a really bad thing for us as consumers. So I just sort of like to ask, is it reasonably feasible that this number of sellers could get together and work together? If so, you might call it an oligopoly. But when you get up around 20 businesses or so, they're probably just not going to cooperate. Next row here, how standardized or differentiated is the product? So think about the product that they sell. Remember when we studied perfect competition, we said every seller is selling an identical product. So that tended to be things like farmers selling agricultural products that were identical, or commercial fishermen, the fish are identical. So that's probably the key characteristic. If you've got many sellers of an identical product, you're probably in perfect competition. In monopolistic competition, you have many sellers of a similar product, but it is differentiated, meaning those sellers work very hard to make theirs stand out just a little bit from everybody else's. So, an example, maybe there are a whole bunch of companies out there making blue jeans, but somehow, to me at least, I think Levi's has kind of created this brand name that a lot of people really like. I like Levi's blue jeans. So if you can somehow differentiate your product, that is an indicator of monopolistic competition. But product differentiation is one of the key ways that you compete with all those other sellers. In oligopoly, products will also be differentiated, but that becomes less important. If there are only 2 or 3 businesses in a market, you're going to get, half or a third of the business just by being there. So the differentiation is less important, but it's still important. In pure monopoly, the product is unique because by definition, a monopolist is the only seller of a certain good or service without close substitutes. So I would call their product unique. So that kind of helps you as well. As far as the ability to set prices, we've talked about this before. In perfect competition, sellers are price takers. If you have lots of sellers of an identical product, everybody gets the same price. Again, think of farming, lobster fishing, something like that. So they're what we call price takers, no ability to set prices. Then we just kind of go in order here. In monopolistic competition, you might have a little bit of ability to set your price. The more successfully you can differentiate your product, the more you can raise the price a little bit. But it's still relatively little. All those blue jeans out there, fairly close in price. Although, I don't know, I guess some of the fancy high-end ones are much more pricey. So maybe that's not quite true. In oligopoly, okay, I got to take a break here. This is split in two because I mentioned earlier that oligopolies might work together and collude and form a cartel. So there are 2 ways that an oligopoly market can work. If they are competing with each other, then each business in the market has some ability to set prices. Not a lot, but some. If they become a cartel, then they essentially function as a monopoly together. So the group as a whole completely controls the price. So that basically they're acting like a monopoly. So same answer as here. In monopoly, they are a price setter. They have complete ability to set price. Next row asks, is the business going to make an economic profit in the long run? You'll remember that in perfect competition, we expect none, 0 economic profit in the long run. That's because everybody's selling at the lowest possible price and everybody gets the same price. Your book says that in the long run, in monopolistic competition, we also expect 0 economic profit. And I guess, cut that off. I guess that's maybe technically true. I feel like certainly at least in the medium to short run, short to medium run, businesses can make an economic profit. Again, if you can differentiate your product, make it stand out, get some brand name loyalty, make people willing to pay a little bit higher price just for your name, you're going to make an economic profit. I think their point is, given enough time, somebody will eat away at that and your profit will probably disappear. But for a pretty long time, some companies have kept up some brand name loyalty and made profits. Split again over here. In an oligopoly market where businesses are competing, every business can probably make some economic profit, a little more than a monopolistic competition. In a cartel, they're certainly going to be able to make more because they work as one. They work like a monopoly. Monopoly, as you see over here, can, yes, make economic profit. Let me move myself. Go to the last row. Importance and goal of advertising. So think about the importance of advertising. In perfect competition, would a farmer or a lobsterman ever advertise, hey, buy my product, it's just like everybody else's and it's at the same price? No, that wouldn't make any sense. But you do sometimes see them get together and advertise as an industry. So you might see an ad on TV, for example, for drinking milk. Milk is really good for you. That's all those dairy farmers banding together and promoting their product as a unit. Or you saw for a while there was beef, it's what's for dinner. That was like the Cattlemen's Association or somebody trying to push the industry. So you see industry-wide advertising, never for an individual seller. In monopolistic competition, advertising is critical. It's a key way to compete and differentiate their product. Oligopoly, it's important, but less so. Last, in monopoly, they don't really have to push their product, but you think about it, you see ads on TV for like Bemera, but they say things like, don't use metal ladders near our power lines, or look how fast we went out and got your power on after the last ice storm. So you do see it, but mostly I think for monopolies, their ads are about controlling public opinion and keeping up a good public image. So there you go. Hopefully that slide helps you figure out what market structure exists where. All right, so I'm about out of time. Part 2 is coming next.